What's up, y'all? It's your girl Amanda, and we are back with another episode of Mandy's Entertainment Reviews. So, for this episode, we are reviewing 30 for 30 Booyah, a portrait of Stuart Scott. So, this documentary was on ESPN. Now, I don't have the traditional cable with ESPN, I don't have the ESPN app. So, I ended up buying this episode on Amazon Prime for $2.99, which is a great investment, by the way. So if you're like not into a certain show and there's just something you want to see, you could just buy the episode for $2.99, and it's yours to keep. So it's in your Amazon library. So it was released in December of 2025. I didn't get a chance to watch it until like January of 2026. Again, I just ended up buying it on Amazon Prime for $2.99. I give this documentary a 5 out of 5, 5 stars out of 5 stars. A lot of reasons why is because I've learned so much more about Stuart Scott. I grew up watching Stuart Scott on ESPN. I started watching ESPN in 2006. That's when I really started to really get into sports, and I would see him on there. And also, he'd be in like the music videos and all that stuff. I forgot, or I kind of forgot he died in 2015. I could have sworn he died in like the late 2010s, but not 2015. So he's been gone 11 years. 11 years already. Time just flies by so fast. And, this was in his time when he was on TV like that. It was before the boom of social media. Like, we had social media in 2015, but it wasn't as big as it is now. Like, everything needs to be filmed, everything needs to be posted, and all that stuff. But, yeah, I remember him being on ESPN. He was just so much fun, and just being so live and being in personalities' lives and things like that. And this documentary actually gave him insight on who he was when he wasn't on camera at ESPN. I don't think he had like social media, the little social media we had back when he was on TV during the internet time. So we learn more about his personality and things like that. So as you guys know, I do my documentary reviews and want to know and what I learned. So what do I know about Stuart Scott? Stuart Scott combined hip hop with sports. So he dressed sports hip hop like when he was on TV. He mentioned like the rappers and stuff. He was in the Raise the Roof video with Uncle Luke. Everybody was in that video too. Him, Heather Hunter, I think 112, Diddy, Lil Kim was on there, Stevie J, a lot of people. I gotta go back and watch that video again. I was obsessed with that video at one point because it just looked like one big party. He worked for ESPN since the 90s. He won the Jimmy V Award. I think that was like his last public appearance on TV when he won the Jimmy V Award. He was so loved by his ESPN colleagues. And the reason why I mention that is because when they announced that he passed away on ESPN, I just remember one of the personalities, I forgot her name, but she was crying on air. And she said, this is the hardest announcement I had to make. And she started crying when she said, Stuart Scott passed away. He had cancer. He had the signature catchphrase, Booyah. He was married, and he had two daughters, Sydney and Taylor. He died in 2015, and he was actually born in Chicago. So, what did I want to know about Stuart Scott is his young life in Chicago. Did he like grow up until a certain age in Chicago? Does he have any like memories of Chicago? His family life. I knew he was married and his two daughters, but like what was life at home with him and all that stuff. His early broadcasting days, his college broadcasting days, because when you're on TV like he was on TV, you had to do something in college too. So I wanted to know more about that. His early ESPN days, behind the scenes of anything at ESPN, because sometimes ESPN will film behind the scenes stuff and use the footage in like later documentaries and stuff. Notable broadcasts like when he would interview Allen Iverson, for example, after like he scored a 60-point game. Just an example, like things like that. I wanted to know his own words of working with hip hop. What were his final days like? And lastly, how will his legacy be carried out? So, what did I learn about Stuart Scott? He had 18 eye surgeries. That's a lot of surgeries on the eyes. He was diagnosed with like an eye condition, so he couldn't play sports as a kid. So that's where it stemmed from. Now, he was born in Chicago, but he grew up in North Carolina, and he is the youngest of four children. So, what I take from that is that he probably has more North Carolina memories than he does of Chicago. His family was the first black family on the block in North Carolina, but he still had his Midwest accent. The reason why I added that is because similar situation with my mom. The town I grew up in was predominantly white once upon a time. And then my mom was like the second black homeowner. But then by like 2005, we were like just another black family. And then most of the white residents had white flight. And, yeah, so I kind of, I can kind of like relate to that through my mom. So he played football as a kid and he wanted to be a pro athlete, which I guess makes sense why he went into like the sports broadcasting. He knows so much about it. Let's see, he produced TV projects in college. So as you should when you study media in college. He went to the same college, UNC, as Michael Jordan, which I did write down because I didn't know that. And Michael Jordan went to college during the 80s, like early 80s. Now, producing TV projects is something you do when you major in it. You have to take like a radio TV class or something. I, for one, studied radio TV in high school and in college, and I produced like some stuff. I don't know if he did like radio, but I did radio. I would prefer radio over TV if you ask me. It's a lot of classes you have to take in college, which was easier for me because I took some of the classes in high school too. So, yeah. So basically, when you are a radio TV major, you got to take those classes. So, yep, produced TV projects in college. Went to college with Michael Jordan. I think he said he was younger than Michael Jordan. He was in his first year. Michael Jordan was in his last year before he went pro. He was told by a news director that he sucked. Another thing about working in like media and stuff, people are going to tell you, you suck, or it's not for you, or you have to kind of figure that out for yourself. Sometimes it's just haters. Honestly, it's just haters. But he didn't let that get to him. Like, obviously, he did very well in life. His first job didn't pay a lot, and he didn't have AC in his apartment. I think he was at the time in Florida. But, he came up. Shaq said Stuart was the first black reporter that he saw and felt comfortable with, which I did not know that with Shaq because Shaq is just such a goofball. So I'm like, wow. It must take a lot for him to, be comfortable because, Stuart Scott is just so cool and Shaq is so silly. So thank you, Stuart Scott, for allowing Shaq to just be himself. And also, I want to say, I think that maybe Shaq used that confidence that Stuart Scott gave him to go be at inside the NBA over at ESPN. I was going to say TNT, but they moved over to ESPN, which sucks. But, it is what it is. Stuart met his wife while working in Orlando, and what was so sweet was that their engagement was filmed. So I guess, even though they divorced, I guess she will forever have that footage to remember him by, and it was such a sweet moment. It's really professional, and it was in a park too, from what I remember. So that was so sweet. Something that's not related to Stuart Scott is that Keith Olbermann and Robin Roberts used to work for ESPN. Did not know that, and I was an ESPN fan. Keith Olbermann, I think he went over to MSNBC after ESPN. I remember him kind of being like one of those political analysts. And Robin Roberts, I grew up watching her on Good Morning America for years and years and years. And she's still on Good Morning America too, which is great. He married his first wife, who was Kimberly. He married her in '93, and then he started his. It started to take off for him because first he was hesitant on sending a tape to ESPN, but he bet Kimberly, and she won. So he ended up getting a job with ESPN2. And I always thought ESPN2 was born in like 2000, but it turned out it was born in '93, and it was aimed at a younger audience. I don't think it stuck by its word because when I had cable, or when I would watch cable and I would watch ESPN2, ESPN would have regular Sports Center, maybe a game or something or whatever. ESPN2 would have like freaking pool or poker or whatever. Like from what I saw growing up, it was not aimed at no younger audience. So he ended up getting the job at ESPN. He ended up moving to Bristol, Connecticut. Now, I don't know, in 2026, is ESPN based in both Bristol and LA? I don't know, but back in the day, it was based only in Bristol. And looked like a big campus. It could be like University of ESPN from the footage I saw on the documentary. It was huge. It was huge. It just reminded me of like, I don't know, Southern Illinois Carbondale University campus. He would write like how he would talk, which is something he has in common with me because when I write my books, most of my characters are black. So I would write like how I would hear dialect every day in my life. Like my grandmother who was born in Mississippi, or my cousin who lived on the west side. Like, I would write like how I would talk or how I would hear dialect. So it's a habit. I wish to break that habit, but I'm glad that I'm not alone, or I wasn't alone in having that habit. He supported Shaq when he did his rap album in '94 or '95 or something. He is such a good friend for supporting that because I only like one song from Shaq. Shaq, in my opinion, can't rap. Like, he's no Kendrick Lamar, but he supported Shaq. He was being a friend and supported him. His daughter Taylor is the same age as me. I always thought she was younger than me for a minute, and then I thought, oh, she's older than me, but nope, she's the same age as me. I think she's born like a few months before me or something. The first show that Stuart did, Sports Night, it lasted 2 years. I was like, I've never seen an episode of that show because it only lasted 2 years. He wanted to get on Sports Center real bad. Now, on ESPN1, the leading show at the time for a long time until it started to crumble with Sports Center. And I don't understand why. I guess because at the time it was like a big deal, but then, at the end of like what ESPN was in like the 2020s and stuff, all they would do is play Sports Center over and over and over again until like 5 a.m. And I guess that's when they would play like the fresh episode of Sports Center. But I guess like, during that time, during Stuart's time, that was the big cheese. He was told to tone down his personality, and they didn't like his style. And when I heard that in the documentary, my mind just instantly yelled microaggression. I didn't like that because when you get on TV, isn't your personality supposed to like stand out? Aren't you hired on your personality when you do TV or radio? It was a microaggression on ESPN's half. So, yeah. There was a bomb at the Atlanta Olympics in 1996. I've never heard of anything like that in '96. I was one, but of course you learn like the history of the Olympics and stuff in school. That bomb was never mentioned to me or anything, so it took me until watching this documentary of learning this of this piece of history. And what happens was Stuart actually ended up covering it, which proved himself for Sports Center. Like, he took off his sports hat and he put on like his I don't want to say his daily news, but like current events hat. He put on his current events hat for that. So that's what got him the job at Sports Center. His co-anchor was Rich Eisen. Now, I don't know too much about Rich Eisen. I just know about his podcast he has currently. But they were complete opposites, but they clicked. They had a friendship. And his theater background, because he did study theater in college, it helped with the Sports Center commercials, and I loved the Sports Center commercials. They were so funny. I remember one. I don't think he was in it. I don't remember, but it was somebody and Carmelo Anthony. It could have been Stuart, and they gave Carmelo a pair of socks, and Carmelo was like, "Oh, it's soaked," and I guess the analyst walked away. I just cannot remember who the analyst was. If you guys remember this commercial I'm talking about, please put it in the comments, because I think it was Stuart, but it could have been someone else. And Carmelo, the analyst walked away, and Carmelo used a pin to scrape the sweaty sock into the garbage. And then another one they showed that I liked that I've never seen before was the one with LeBron. He was in the copy room trying to fix the big printer or fax machine or something, and Stuart walked up and was like, "The chosen one, huh?" And he snickered and walked away. That made me laugh so hard. He got Booyah from a childhood neighbor describing a thunderstorm. Sounds about down south. That's the first thing I thought when he said that. He wanted to know extra stats to make stories better. When you're in broadcasting, you got to do what you got to do to kind of plump the stories, if you will. So he wanted to do extra stats to make stories better. He was parodied on Saturday Night Live. So if you are parodied on Saturday Night Live, you made it in life, in my opinion. He got a lot of hate mail with racial slurs, which was scary and sad. He interviewed people like Tom Cruise and Bill Clinton and Tiger Woods. A lot of big name sports, well, and a president. Tiger Woods, at once upon a time, and I hate to sound like that, but he was like a huge deal. He still is, but I guess after his situation with his first wife, Elin, I think it kind of like ruined his image, if you ask me. So, yeah. But he interviewed Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise was a big deal back in the day with all the whole Scientology stuff, I guess, yeah. His second daughter, Taylor, was born in 99. So, again, he has two daughters. She was born in 99. He went to the Jets training camp to do a story, and he wanted to try out for the New York Jets. And then it didn't make sense to me because he was, kind of up there in age. But he had vision in one eye, and the ball hit him in the good eye at the training camp. After his eye injury, he had some difficulties. He had a hard time reading stat sheets and things like that. Because he was so popular, and when you work in broadcasting, he was gone a lot, and obviously it took effect on his marriage. Cindy and Taylor, they would tell stories about how they didn't have like a traditional Christmas at home with their parents. They were always at work with Stuart, who would work the basketball games for like Christmas, Father's Day, and things like that. And in the end, Kimberly and Scott divorced. And so it was towards the end of the documentary, then he started talking about how he had a pain in his stomach, and he went to the hospital, and he had cancer in the appendix. That's what he was diagnosed with. And while he was, getting his treatments for cancer, he maintained an active lifestyle. I'm not a medical expert or anything, so I just wonder, like, did that help or did that, like, hurt him? You know what I mean? I don't know. I just wondered that. And after, I don't know if it was after he got diagnosed or before, but that's around the time he met his girlfriend, Kristen, and they were just cute as can be together. And when Stuart got sick, that's when she quit her job and helped take care of him. And again, y'all, he won the Jimmy V Award. So he was actually in the hospital before the ESPYs when he was getting the awards. His organs were shutting down, which I didn't know that, because when I saw him on TV, he looked really, really, really frail, but I didn't know how bad things were, like his organs were shutting down. And his daughter, Taylor, actually had pictures of him in his last days when he was in the hospital. He was, like, so skinny, and it was just so sad. Like, I had tears in my eyes just seeing those photos. So it broke my heart. Okay, so, again, I give this documentary a 5 out of 5. What did I like about this documentary is that, there's personal home movies and photos with his daughter, his first wife, and his second wife. I love seeing his family together, his siblings, his ex-wife. His ex-wife spoke so nice about him, so highly of him. Didn't drag him or anything. So, and he also talked about and gave other black newscasters their flowers, as he should have. What did I dislike about this documentary is that he had to be criticized for who he was. Like, he had to be told to tone down and all that stuff. Like, he had a talent. Like, should not have been told to tone down who he was. You know what I mean? People watch ESPN to see Stuart Scott. You know? Yeah. I just broke my heart to see how skinny he was towards the end, and the waterworks I had at the end of the documentary, where he had shot this video and said, "I'm gonna walk away now," and then he just walked off into the sunset, and the documentary ended there, and it just broke my heart. But I did really enjoy this documentary, and it's on ESPN if you have the ESPN app. It's a 30 for 30 documentary. A lot of good 30 for 30 documentaries I've watched over the years. So, yeah. So, thank y'all for listening, and go check it out. Because Stuart Scott is Black History Month. He is Black History. So, check it out. And I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.